Every morning, Mount Wudang wakes up to the sight of sunshine enhancing the beauty of temple roofs. These temples enshrine the statue of the god Xuanwu, and it is said that every day a giant turtle appears in the sky as it goes about watching over events on the ground below. Taoists believe that the turtle is the incarnation of the god Xuanwu. To followers of Taoism, Mount Wudang is the perfect place for becoming one with heaven, the ultimate objective of a Taoist. But why is Mount Wudang so special? Is it a sheer coincidence or a deliberate situation brought about by some supernatural force? Every spring, local people gather on top of Five Dragon Peak to pray for rain. The peak is believed to be the source of energy of the dragon, and that is forever guarded by a member of the dragon family known as the Wu-Chi dragon. Locals simply call this dragon the dragon god. Today, people no longer place hope in the dragon for rain. Yet the ancient dragon-worshipping ceremony has been kept alive as part of local tradition. The ceremony takes place every year in an atmosphere of fun and festivity. There is an unbreakable bond between this mountain and water, a bond that began in the distant past. The story begins 1,000 years ago with a ceremony held for the same purpose. It was the 8th year after Li Shimin took the throne and established the Tang dynasty. While the nation was still recovering from a period of warfare, a severe drought hit the country, and swarms of locusts ate everything in their path. In spite of repeated prayer ceremonies presided over by ministers on the emperor's behalf, there was no rain. With no end to the disaster in sight, the desperate emperor turned his eyes to Mount Wudang, which was over 500 kilometers from his capital. He sent a minister named Yao Jian to preside over a special ceremony on Mount Wudang on his behalf, and from that time on, a bond developed between the water god Xuanwu and the rulers of subsequent dynasties. According to history books, on his way to Mount Wudang, Yao Jian met 5 members of the dragon family. They told him, "This mountain is under the supervision of the god Xuanwu. Because you're an honest person, he has instructed us to help you." As soon as they spoke these words, there was a downpour and the drought came to an end. This is a story that begins with drops of water, but when raindrops are brought together they form a trickle, then a stream, and finally a river. In the ancient philosophical book Tao Te Ching, water is described as a blessing from heaven to moisten the earth. To Lao Tzu, its author, water has the most admirable characteristics of anything on earth, and one should emulate these noble features. Most importantly, water gives itself to others in the most unselfish way. It takes nothing in return.
In the Tao Te Ching, water is often used metaphorically to describe the personality of a sage. The idea is that flowing water possesses the virtues of modesty and humility.
That downpour of over 1,000 years ago made Mount Wudang famous far and wide, and the grateful emperor ordered that a royal temple be built on Five Dragon Peak to commemorate the dragon's generosity. As time went on, the royal temple was joined by many others. Mount Wudang had become famous, more famous in fact than the 5 traditional sacred mountains put together. Mount Wudang now topped the list of famous mountains across China, and it was the destination dreamed of by all practitioners of Taoism.
唐代的帝王都喜欢吃丹药，希望于世长生。武当山呢，炼丹药的人，在当时整个全中国，他们是最出名的、最优秀的，所以在唐代中心目中，武当山是仙山很灵。
In the early years of the Tang dynasty, the Emperor Li Shiming turned to Lao Tzu to make his regime more orthodox. Because Lao Tzu had Li as a surname, as did the Emperor Li Shiming, the Emperor proclaimed that he was Lao Tzu's offspring. He then made Lao Tzu's Taoism the official state belief, ahead of the other 2 dominant belief systems, Buddhism and Confucianism.
所以唐朝初年的这些贬官呢，包括皇太子，没有势力了，被废掉了，都发配到武当山这边来。那么这个开化地区，它建立一个宗教中心，也对这个地方起一种什么作用呢？是一种文化上加以充实的作用。
One may ask why it was that at the time Yao Jian made his trip to Wudang under orders from Emperor Taizong to pray for rain, Mount Wudang had not already been endowed with any royal prestige. Why did the emperor choose Mount Wudang for this mission?
因为武当山有武当，非真武不足以挡之。就说真武神是武当山的举神。 那要求雨，那肯定要在他举神的地方求啊。
This was how the bond between the mountain and the emperors of China began, and how the god Xuanwu came to be favored. What kind of god was Xuanwu? These statues of Xuanwu are part of the collection of the local Cultural Relics Department. The name Xuanwu first appeared in the Chinese classical book, The Song from the State of Chu, Traveling, or I Carry Your Heart with Me. According to this book, Xuanwu resides in the north. He is part turtle and part snake in appearance and is clad in armor-like scales. In antiquity, people looked upon a group of stars in the southern sky as a huge bird, which they named Zhu Che. At the same time, they regarded a group of stars in the east as a dragon, which they named Qing Lung, and a group of stars in the west, a white tiger, which they named Bai Hu. The stars in the north resembled a turtle and a snake intertwined. Later, this image became more or less standardized, and the god it represented was no longer seen as the god that protected animals only. Its supremacy was extended to cover anything that took place in the north. Personifying an animal image was a step forward in ancient belief systems. However, it was not over in the case of Xuanwu. Over a period of several hundred years, Xuanwu's status changed radically from a deified army general to an immortal and finally the ruler of the northern sky. Xuanwu's image was enshrined everywhere in temples on Mount Wudang, worshipped with awesome respect by the public and emperors alike. To the ruler of each dynasty in China, Mount Wudang held a special position. As soon as the prayer ceremony is over, Mr. Gung, who has served as the village head for a dozen or more years, returns home to tend his crops. His home is, in fact, close to the remains of the ancient Five-Dragon Temple. The temple was originally built in the Tang dynasty, but it was enlarged many times by rulers of later dynasties. However, the past 1400 years have taken a heavy toll on the ancient structure. The main hall has collapsed, but from its size, we can easily gain an impression of the glory the temple once enjoyed.
因为在这个地方求雨非常灵验，所以呢，历代皇帝都很重视。有唐而宋，有宋而元，一直到明朝。那么宋朝叫五龙观，五龙灵应观，到了元朝开始改名为五龙宫， 后来呢叫五龙灵应宫，再后来叫大五龙灵应宫，到明朝叫兴盛五龙宫。所以说它的这个名字里边包含的这种灵应的色彩是非常明显的。
This winding road was once flanked with high walls. Ironically, although Five Dragon Temple was strongly associated with water, on more than one occasion it suffered from fire. One of these fires broke out during a war in the late Yuan dynasty, and another took place during the Qing dynasty. But the most devastating fire occurred in 1927, when bandits torched the temple and it was reduced to a pile of charred ruins. Nothing from the original temple remains aside from a wall that stands isolated and alone. The local people have built a new hall next to the wall to enshrine a gilt bronze sculpture of the god Xuanwu in a sitting posture.
From the time of the Tang and Song dynasties through to the Yuan and Ming dynasties, many generations of Taoists worked to complete the Five Dragons Temple. Sadly, though, no written description of the temple in its splendor has survived. Everything we know about it has come down to us through legend. Thank you for joining us on today's New Frontiers and tuning again for more about the Wudang Mountains, Taoism's most sacred sanctuary. I'm Ji Xiaojun on CCTV International. Goodbye.